All right, students, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hopefully, you guys are staying healthy. Uh, we're streaming live for the fourth time today. We had a couple virtual classes earlier today, so this is the fourth time we've been on. So hopefully, you guys are doing well. I'm going to try to stay with it as much as I can as we move through this final lesson of the day, which is about the ACT computer-based testing. A lot of you guys, if you guys are logging on internationally, a lot of you know about the computer-based test as it is. The ACT has been running the computer-based test, I think, since 2018, I think it is, when they first implemented it. And again, the computer-based test just allows students to receive results quicker, but you take the test on a computer. There's Traditionally it's been a testing site. Traditionally, you've taken it at a testing site, but the ACT, in lieu of everything that's going on right now with the coronavirus pandemic. There's some talk about whether or not they're going to allow the test to be taken at home. For those that don't know, the AP exams that are administered by the College Board. The College Board is who writes the SAT as well. The AP exams will be administered from home, and so there's some pretty easy ways to administer the ACT exam from home. I'm interested to see if they end up doing this in the future. I'll talk about some thoughts as to why that might be an option. And in reality, taking it from home, we've had a lot of questions about like, well, some they can be getting help and all that kind of stuff. The ACT exam is actually uniquely set up to be taken at home. Frankly, obviously, if you have a person sitting there taking it with you, then that would be a big problem, right? That would just be blatant cheating. But the way that they've combated that is the webcam on your computer. They ask for access for that. I believe at the testing sites as well. I'm not sure as much how that goes. But that's what they're going to do for the AP exams. They're going to ask that you give access to your digital camera or your webcam, and that's going to allow them to see. They're not going to hopefully be looking at you while you take the test. But should there ever be a question of cheating, it actually is a better way to see if it's really you that's taking the test versus like having to rely on somebody passing their ID and being checked by a proctor. That whole thing. You can literally see somebody taking the test in real time, so that'll be a really easy way for them to combat whether or not it's a student taking the test or it's a teacher or tutor behind the scenes taking the test. And then on top of that, what's even maybe cooler than that is the fact that the ACT just in general is actually set up well to be taken at home, in the sense that if you're not focused, for those that have taken the official test before, if you're not completely focused all the way through the exam, if you're focused, for example, on talking to somebody about a question or whatever it might be, basically if you're focused on cheating on the test, it's actually a huge disadvantage because the time sensitivity that goes along with the ACT, much different from the SAT, really hinders the ability to cheat because you'd have to be cheating pretty quickly if that were to happen. So in my estimation, as we go through this, and for those that have watched our videos in the past, I actually think the ACT computer-based test is something that we should have adopted way before now. And again, we shouldn't have had to have a pandemic across the world, a global questioning of the global education system shouldn't have led to this. But in a lot of ways, this has led to some creative thinking in terms of how can we make this available to students right away. And I think there's a lot of easy ways to do that. And like I said, I think there's a lot of easy ways to do that from home. The College Board is way behind the AP, the College Board is way behind the ACT in terms of computer-based testing and technology. And so if the College Board can do it for the APs in a pretty short amount of time, I don't see a reason why the ACT can't do the same thing and potentially have an ACT makeup test as an example that you could maybe take from home. I'm not sure exactly how that will work. I don't want to speculate too much. But my goal today is to do two things. One, the computer-based test will be introduced to the United States to just American students in September. So that's the first thing I want to bring up. It doesn't mean you're required to take it. As of right now, you won't be required to take the computer-based model as international students are. But there is a chance that they move pretty quickly to a computer-based model solely because of everything that's going on right now. If not in September, in order to give students the ability to take maybe the June test and not have to cancel the June test, perhaps they find a way to make the computer-based test available. Okay, so as you guys are logging on here, does anybody have any questions for me? Any questions for me? And then the second thing I want to ask, does anybody have any, or if you don't want to respond, just if you like the video, this isn't me looking for likes, you don't have to like the video, but if you do like the video, let me know so that it gives me a sense as to what videos we should do in the future and what we should talk about in the future, because it's always a little daunting to know what you guys want to hear about. So I think this will be a good lesson. I think it'll be something that we can go through. We're going to actually go through a computer-based test and talk about the advantages to computer-based testing, the disadvantages to computer-based testing, and yeah, and what you guys can look for in the future. Okay? So, any other questions? We're not going to do a full, by the way, if anybody's expecting me to do a full practice test, that's not going to happen tonight, but we are going to talk about the test in general. So that will happen. I just don't want to set expectations too high. This is our fourth class that we're streaming today. We have virtual classes with different high schools around the country, and we've streamed 3 of those this morning. So I'm running out of breath here. So I'm gonna give it my all. Diet Coke certainly helps. Yeah, great question, Jackson. So that's a phenomenal question. So should the test go to computer-based testing? Let's bring this up real quick. So I'm gonna switch over here. So this is just something that's available to all students on the ACT. Unfortunately, the ACT materials that are currently available for the computer-based test are far less. I'm actually interested on that note to see what happens because, as many of you know, there's a lot of ways to acquire tests that aren't supposed to be distributed. It's not really been a problem. ACT has just kind of let it go in the past, but I'm interested to see what happens to those materials as they switch over to computer-based testing only. Do students just continue to take the written form as practice, and then they just transition into the computer-based form? I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see on that note what's going to happen. Okay, so what we're going to bring up here is we're going to have this is the official ACT exam. If it's not easy to see, give me 1 sec, guys. I'm just going to copy the link here. Just going to copy this link for you guys so you'll have the access to that. Okay, it's coming up. So if you guys take a look at this, so that link to the ACT website, that'll give you guys access to the same test I'm looking at. Right now I'm looking at English, the untimed English test, so untimed English. Take a look at that. Okay, let me know, guys, when you guys have everything pulled up. And then as a quick transition, just to show you guys some different things, I'm going to also bring up, this is the BO4 test. So you guys have seen our videos in the past. I'm going to talk a little bit about the written format of the BO4 test and just how they differ. Okay. So, okay. Is everybody good with that? Okay, guys, so the big one here, as you guys see in the background, this is the English section. So there's two, in my estimation, before we get into this too much, there are 2 major advantages to the computer-based model, and there's one major, I don't want to say disadvantage because this is happening, so I don't want to get you guys in your minds that this is going to be some disadvantage to you. But there is one major, there's one disadvantage potentially to taking the computer-based test. International students, if you guys are watching right now, you guys have the most familiarity with taking it in time and in a real situation. So I'd love to hear from you as well. If you guys have any thoughts or anything that I need to add. But the major advantage to taking the computer-based test is relatively obvious, and that's the lack of chaos. Okay. Yeah. So great question. We have a question here about computer-based testing and Star Tutors providing another course. We are working, so our StarU tutoring app, we'll talk about that maybe at the end, but our StarU tutoring app actually is designed, we knew this was coming, we knew the computer-based testing, we anticipated it, and our app is actually designed for computer-based testing. It's designed in the same format as this is. We're actually adding a timer feature right now for our app. But on top of that, we are going to try to add a course, and we actually might try to add our own computer-based test. Just again, the ACT, don't get me wrong, the ACT materials are going to be the best, so don't stop taking practice tests to turn to our materials. I try to be as honest with you guys as I possibly can be. Certainly don't turn to our materials ahead of the actual ACT materials, but in light of the fact that there are going to be very few practice tests available online, we're trying to create our own practice test just to give you guys some more materials. So yes, we're going to try to do a computer-based test. Until it's officially a part of the curriculum especially for American students, we won't make that a priority. But if it makes the transition quickly, we'll be ready to go. So we've been planning for this for a while, and that's That's really where my familiarity comes from this. Just so you guys know my background on the computer-based model, I've also worked with a number of students in Europe and South Africa. We're based here in Los Angeles, but Europe and South Africa have been prominent testing, and then as well as India. So those three places we've had students that worked, and because of that, I have a pretty good familiarity with the ACT computer-based testing. Okay, so in any case, here are the two major advantages to taking it on the computer. So for international students that feel like you guys are disadvantaged, in my opinion, you guys actually have an advantage over American students, and here's why. The first is the complete lack of chaos. The great thing, yes, just Sarah, great question. If it does go online, you guys will be well prepared. We're ready to make the transition. I don't want to make this a sorry guys, and I'm reading these questions as they come in. I don't want to make you guys feel anxious or overwhelmed. There's no indication from the ACT right now that they would move to the computer-based model. The only thing I want you guys to be aware of is that they've been doing computer-based testing internationally for a long time, so that it's available, as you guys can see on the website, on the ACT website, this is available. And because the AP courses, the SAT is way behind technologically from the ACT, the College Board is, and the fact that they moved their APs to a computer-based model already makes me feel like if the ACT is way ahead, then why wouldn't they do it? So again, I don't want to build any anxiety to think that you guys have to change your testing, but should they move to a model where you guys are taking it on the computer, we will be ready to go, so don't be too anxious if you're already in one of our classes. Okay, so in any case, here's the computer-based test. And again, it gives you guys two advantages, namely that there's not a ton of chaos. So there's a couple navigation features that students are very familiar with, probably with everything else you guys do. If you click navigation at the top, and again, I posted the link to these, you can actually scroll through all 75 questions involved with the ACT English test. That's awesome, actually. Because what it does is instead of having, when you're running low on time, instead of having to flip from test to test, right, page to page and getting worried about that, what you can do instead is just hit navigation and immediately see which answer choices you haven't clicked on. So it's it's way less likely that you would just skip over a question like you might on a bubble sheet, or that you might, circling answers, solely because you can just very quickly see which questions are unanswered. So that's one major advantage. And then the other major advantage goes right along with this chaos idea, is that each question is designed to only show you a certain amount of space. Now again, on a test like the English section, that doesn't really help you very much because there's all 15 questions can be, right, are within the first passage. But if we back up real quick, so I'm going to exit out of the English section and I'm just going to back up here and I look at the math section. In terms of chaos and just feeling overwhelmed, sometimes when we turn to the math section in particular, it just can feel very overwhelming. So let me show you what this looks like. So again, I just backed out, I just hit back, and I clicked on that link again and clicked math instead of English. If you look at the math section, in terms of this idea of chaos, when you look at the math section on the regular ACT exam, let me show you guys that. So if you look at the math section on a regular test, right, there's a whole bunch, especially as you get further into these questions, like look at this. There's a whole bunch going on here. So for students that are taking it written, if you flip the page and you see all these things, there's a lot of chaos going on. Okay, and that adds to student anxiety. When you take the computer-based test, every question is individually marked. So if I flip to question number 11, for example, that is individual. And again, if you flag a question then, so like I flagged question number 11, I can come back to it just like I'm circling. But the big difference is when you circle a question in your test booklet, it's not like then that it shows you where you circled it. You still have to go back and like, oh wait, was that number 25 or 35 or wherever it was? No, on the computer-based model, you can just flag the problem, right? And then click number 26 or whatever it is, and now you have all of the scroll, or you have the navigation feature, and as you look at this navigation feature, right, you can see which questions you were flagged. I can click on number 11 again because I flagged that question, and now I can come back to it. Okay, so hopefully, does everybody watching, do you guys get a feel that in some ways the computer-based test, in terms of navigation, and this just goes, with everything that we've ever discussed, technology being the future, obviously, technology makes everything more efficient in every other aspect of your lives, and so why wouldn't it on the ACT exam? Okay, does that make sense? Is that all good, guys? Can you guys give me a thumbs up or thumbs up just in the comments section if you guys are following along with all this stuff? In the meantime, Sarah, you asked about the three pass strategy. We're going to talk about that tonight. In many ways, I actually feel like that three pass strategy, right, finding the easy questions, works way better on the computer based model than it does on the written form because the three pass method, the one thing I get nervous about with that three pass idea is that students will feel too overwhelmed circling so many questions. Okay, but if you go back here to question number one, and you're like, okay, question number one looks easy. I feel great about that. Great. If you skip that, or if you skip any question, Sarah, right? If I come to question number 11 and I feel like, well, that's probably not the best example because that one doesn't look too hard. Neither does I should have had questions flagged because I knew the question was coming. Yeah, like let A and B be positive prime numbers. For anybody that's ever taken our class, you guys know that right that if a question's too difficult or if it looks like it's going to be complicated, we tell you guys to move on from that. Again, the beauty of this, Sarah, is that you flag this, you hit next, and now you know exactly where those questions are that would be effective. So they're effectively flagging this second pass for you. And the one thing I get nervous about when describing this pass method with students is like, will students feel too overwhelmed having to circle so many questions and then come back and that's why we do the whole start it, go to the whole thing, and then come back to the beginning. With the computer-based model and how they flag questions, in a lot of ways, you have a huge advantage in the sense that now that you know exactly which questions you've skipped, and you can come back to those in a very very short amount of time. And not to mention, you don't have to keep flipping through pages. Like let's say you flip to number 9 and you skipped number 9. Now you've skipped number 16, and that's the next question you've skipped, and you flagged that one. Now you're right at number 16. So there's no chaos, there's no loss of time, there's no loss of time bubbling in any answers, and you're still given the 60 minutes that students that have to bubble in on the written form are given. So again, in so many ways, I really feel like it's great. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of the computer-based model. I can see why, because I'm going to talk about the one disadvantage I think students have currently, which is just reading on a computer screen more than anything. But as you guys get more and more familiar with this, I think you're going to find that this is a great way to test going forward. I'm honestly, guys, I am just thrilled that the ACT is it's light years ahead in terms of like they don't provide as many materials as the SAT does, but just in terms of testing and understanding students and there's so many advantages to what the ACT is offering students right now, and so it's good to be able to show you that as well. DJ, let's see. If you answer a question at darkness, you just flag ones you don't know if answered correctly. If you answer a question at darkness, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so yeah. If I would flag, so any question that you guys have you struggle with and you want to come back to, I would just immediately flag it. Again, the disadvantage of circling. So this is another big thing. We always talk about. It's a great question about flagging which questions. We always talk in class about how like I'm very realistic. I was the biggest procrastinator in the world when I was your age, so I'm very realistic as to what I should expect from students. On the real test, you comb through the whole test, right? And then you get to the end, and despite my pleas to make sure that you guys go back and look at questions that you found were hard, we all know what happens to 16 and 17-year-olds. You guys get to the end of the test, and you're just like, nope, that's it for me, right? I'm done. I don't need to see any more of this. Right, that's realistic. I'm not under any false illusions that doesn't happen where you guys get to the end and you're just done. There's a major amount of anxiety that comes with flagging a question versus just circling it and moving on. When you can't actually see questions that you've circled, but you know you've bubbled everything in on your answer sheet, there's a lot less anxiety. When you have questions like this, like number 9, and you see a flag above it, you're like, I'm not just going to leave that one, am I? Right, my natural inclination anyway is to click on number 9 and make sure I look at it again, and then basically unflag it. Right, just click flag again. Right, unflag that question in order to guarantee that that's off there. It would give me more anxiety knowing that number 9 was still flagged or number 11 was still flagged, and I didn't go back to it. So again, I think from a chaos standpoint, this really does a nice job of being cohesive in how you can take the exam. Does that all make sense, guys? Is everybody following along with that? Just in terms of what would happen if they switched to the computer-based model. Again, if you guys are watching this and kind of following along with everything that we're talking about, in so many ways, I think the computer-based model is actually going to be a benefit to many of you. I do understand that there's some anxiety to be testing on a written form, then having to make the switch. But it's a small switch given what you guys are going to be able to work through. And then the questions are obviously all the same. So you get 60 minutes for the same amount of questions, but you don't have to bubble. You don't have to take your attention away, right? Bubbling, even that sense of going back and forth, that's difficult to do from time to time. And so that sense of going back and forth is eliminated because all you have to do is just click A and you know immediately which questions you have answered because then, right, I'm going to hit next. And now as I go to my navigation system, right, let's see if I haven't answered any answered questions. Yeah, number 11, right, says answered versus unanswered. You'll see very quickly which ones say unanswered when you've gone through the entire test. So again, in terms of us talking about our 3-pass method, Sarah, jumping back to that, I actually think there's major advantages to using this 3-pass method on the computer-based model because it's so easy to flag which questions you need to look at, which questions you don't. For that matter, just to add on to that, for that matter, on the English and math sections, there's really only major advantages to taking the computer-based test. On English and math, they'll give you scratch paper, and you also have some tools to like highlight certain things or eliminate answers, right? Answer eliminator. So you can click, let's see, answer eliminator. See how this one works. You might not be, actually, I might not be able to use it right now because I don't know what's going on. But there are some major advantages to that. What's the one other thing I wanted to bring up? Oh yeah, so major advantages of being able to flag. You'll have scratch paper that you can write on, so that's good. The first 2 sections I think have major advantages to taking on the computer. The last 2 are a little bit different, and namely because part of part of the things we talk about in class with the reading and science sections is actually writing stuff down, right? Underlining and circling. In my opinion, it's a little bit harder to do that. Again, there are some tools like the highlighter that you'll see. There are some tools that you'll be able to use on the reading sections, but it's still difficult to, in my opinion, to not have the ability to write it. It's a little bit less engaging, in my opinion. Some of you may feel differently. You guys read on the computers all the time for school and stuff, so you might feel differently about that. But that's just my take on the reading and science sections. On the first 2 sections, I think there's major advantages. Let's see. Lauren will practice proctored tests that searchers offers in the future, offering the computer-based format. When might that be available? Sorry. Yeah. So for any great question. So for any questions in terms of the computer-based testing, we will offer practice tests in the same format as we see here. The good news is that the ACT times it. It's difficult, to be honest. That's one thing I'm a little nervous about is just the lack of resources that the ACT has out in terms of timed and untimed tests. I think though, so if you buy the ACT Red Book, there's actually 5 tests available. So the ACT Red Book, right, the big thick practice test guide that's usually written form. Now you'll get a code that allows you to take up to 5 ACT tests that otherwise would be in the book. So you at least have 5 available tests. Technically speaking, there are only 5 like officially released ACT exams anyway right now. Now again, the ACT knows that there's plenty of other tests out there that you can find pretty easily. But technically speaking, there's only 5 officially released tests. So, from that standpoint, I think you could argue that there's going to be the same amount of materials. And again, that will all be available to students should they make this small purchase through ACT. And I think it's definitely going to be worth the purchase when that comes up. Sarah, you said, how would we do the strategy where we answer the same option all the way down for the questions you don't get to? So that's one disadvantage on the math section. You'll remember, though, Sarah, that in terms of that guessing technique at the end of the test, you'll remember that for the most part, as long as so if you go here to like answered questions, you go to the navigation, right? In some ways, I think that they're trying. I don't think that they offer you the answer. Yeah, they don't. In some ways, I think that they're trying to take away that option. But don't forget that if you're trying to guess the answers down, if you just select any answer, right, you're going to get some questions right. That's still something that we're trying to work through in terms of which letter to guess. And we haven't developed a strategy perfectly for that. But I think that you shouldn't worry too much about that because ultimately, our goal in the class is to get you to a point where you're answering like 50 out of the 60 questions correctly. And so if you answer 50 out of 60 correctly with all of the advantages that do come with the computer-based test, that one disadvantage potentially on those last 10 where you want to guess the same letter all the way down, those disadvantages hopefully will dissipate just because you're answering, 5/6 of the test work effectively for this, right, for the computer-based model, and then 1/6, right, the last 10 questions or whatever, those don't work as effectively, but, there are ways around that we can talk about in class, you know, whether that be, timing yourself so that you have 5 extra minutes at the end of the test to actually comb through and write down how many A's, B's, C's, D's, and E's you have, given that you're skipping 10 questions at the end or whatever that might be. But there are ways I think that are around that you can work through it. Does that make sense, Sarah? Also, Lauren, does that make sense? DJ, I know that those ones make sense, guys. Again, I want to stress more than ever, though, guys, that there's all indications for the testing. The original plan for the ACT was to go live with the computer-based model for the September 2020 test, which is just in a few months. That was already scheduled. That was not going to be in lieu of the written format, so they were going to offer both options. So that was, again, not in lieu of the written format. You could take both tests. They were just going to start offering it for a much wider range. They've already offered it at very select testing sites in the U.S. before, but they were going to offer it for as a much wider range test for students. Again, it's been the international students have been taking it forever, and so I don't think there's a huge disadvantage to it. And my goal today was more to just give you guys a sense as to what this computer-based test might look like, given there's some uncertainty with, really what the tests are going to look like over the next 2 or 3 months. If we're in quarantine in June, they're obviously not going to run the test. And so I'm interested to see if they skip April and June and then are on the fence on July. I think at some point they're going to have to implement this computer-based testing potentially from home in order to just make it viable as a viable testing thing for students that are applying in 2020, 2021. So for current juniors, I think they'll have to make it a viable testing option for current juniors. Okay, any questions on that stuff, guys? Just so far, I do want to show you one potential disadvantage. I don't want to say that it's a disadvantage to it, because I feel like that puts out a negative connotation towards it as well. You guys have seen I am the perpetual optimist not only when it comes to testing, but hopefully when it comes to everything that you guys are doing. It's so great for me to be able to see students every day. I truly enjoy it as a profession and helping you guys. And so as a perpetual optimist, I don't want to act like this is some disadvantage, because I truly believe in technology. We invest a lot in technology with our app and this YouTube channel and everything. So I'm really a big believer in what they're offering you guys. But the one maybe disadvantage that you guys could see, if you want to call it that, so if we turn to the reading section and then potentially the science section as well, there is one major advantage to reading. And again, when you look at this reading test, you guys are going to see that these passages, you only have to look at one question per passage. And so that's going to help in a lot of ways. The fact that if you look at the regular test, right, there's a test booklet. You're not going to get the same experience if I turn over here to the regular test. This is the written format. This is the digital copy of the BO4 test. You guys aren't going to get the same experience because I'm scrolling. But in a regular ACT exam, you open, and so this passage is the first page, and then you open and you see all the questions on the next page. So it's like passage questions. Okay, and there's 10 questions, obviously. But even in that situation, you're still going back and forth, right? Your eyes are here, then you have to turn, eyes are here, and there's a very prominent back and forth, and then you have to go to the bubble sheet, right? All of that takes place. The beauty of the computer-based model with the reading section is that it's all right there. I mean, if you're looking at it right now, guys, if you're looking at the computer-based test, it's very compact, right? You're looking at, here's the question, here are the answer choices, these are my bubbles effectively, right? And here's the passage. So there's so much less uncertainty as it applies to the ACT reading section and just what you have to cover. The passages are the same. Now, again, the one disadvantage that I'll say is that if you have tools, right, your highlighter tool. Actually, I don't know why we can't. What am I doing here? Why isn't this working? Maybe it's just it might be because I'm on an iPad here. You'll take it on an actual computer. So your highlighter tool, if that's a feature that that you don't like to read as much online, then that's maybe a slight disadvantage. But again, I think all of the pros of the fact that here's one question, not 10 questions. Here's just one question that applies to one passage, right? I think that's a huge advantage. When you go to question number 2, you're going to see the exact same passage. So you're reading the first 10 questions are going to apply to the first passage just like they did on the written version, but you only have one question appearing per time. And so it allows you, in my view, to compartmentalize this in a lot more efficient way than you have to do on the writing test, on the written form of the test. Okay, does that make sense? Sarah, it's a great question. I no, I don't. There's no way. So that Sarah, I don't think there's. So just remember, guys, I wrote an article about this for those that are in our current ACT classes. But I wrote a short article about this and my feelings towards the SAT and the ACT and why it's still such a prominent test for you guys. There's going to be such major pushback. So colleges are continuing to say like all of this stuff is test optional and all that. And on the surface, that looks great. But the reason that the test has still been so prominent, like the SAT was invented or was put into place in like the 50s after World War II. The reason this test still remains such a prominent test for students is because there's no easy way. Okay, there's no easy way to. Oh, guys, sorry, I'm just following along. There's no easy way to find out who out of there's 200,000 applications this year. They're going to be for the UC University of California school system, not the Cal States, just the UCs. 200,000 applications, and there's just not enough admissions help and admissions resources to sift through those 200,000 applications in a reasonable amount of time. And so again, what you guys need to be thinking about is how do I, if that's the case, the test still has to be a prominent part of the admissions because there's just no other way to get around it. So Sarah, to ease some of that anxiety as I bring all this stuff up, I still think they have to have the test, and I still think the ACT and the SAT, as you've seen with the AP exams being online, I think they're going to do everything in their power to give you guys an opportunity to take this exam. And I do think that they'll have the June test open and the July test open, whether that be in person or online. I think they're just waiting to hear, really waiting to hear to see if they'll have testing centers, aka schools, available to administer the written form of the test. Does that all make sense? Oh yeah. So great question. So DJ's dad, that's a great question. Yeah. So no, you're exactly right. You don't have to. So the navigation part of this is you don't have to do any of that, right? I mean, to a great point. I just wanted to show you guys the nav, but that's a great point. That if realistically, if you guys know that the questions get darker as they go, right? So the question. So let's say next. I don't even know if that's the right answer, right? But we have. So you guys can see at the bottom. Let me just click a few so you guys can see this. But it's a great point. One that I had forgotten about to bring up. Okay, so next. So did you guys see this here? Can you guys see how at the bottom here, and then let me skip a few that I didn't answer. Okay, so you guys see here at the bottom, DJ's dad just pointed out it was perfect. Right, I can flag these questions. So right now at the bottom, the 3, 2, 3, and 4. So let me just try to zoom in. 2, 3, and 4 there are all darkened because it means I've answered those questions. I flagged question number 8. And then 5, 6, 7, 1, 5, 6, and 7, and now 8 are all not darkened because I haven't answered those questions yet. Okay, so it's a great point. So you don't even need the nav. The nav is just to show you just kind of a summary of it all. But you're right. I would just use the bottom scroll panel in order to answer those questions. And again, that's the beauty of the computer-based test is it really eliminates a lot of the chaos that you guys have seen in terms of flipping back and forth. And the proctor has the timer, and you have a timer when you really time this test. The timer just shows up on your screen, right? So you just see the timer. You see exactly what you're seeing here. And then you can flag questions. You can move very efficiently back and forth between the exams. So from an efficiency standpoint, I think the computer-based test is a no-brainer. Staring at a computer screen for 3.5 hours, you could argue, is pretty terrible. But that's really the only disadvantage, that aspect of it, and having to work through the computer rather than having to work with your hands, right? And having to click on tools and stuff. That might create a little bit more chaos, but overall, I think that this test really favors students more than it favors ACT testing. And then on top of all of it, if you take the computer-based test, you also get your scores back in like 2 days. So that's another huge reason why the ACT is wanting to move to this computer-based model. You get your scores back so quickly because I don't even know if it's 2 days. It might be immediate, but I think they say 2 days online, and you get your scores back right away. So that's just another major advantage to it. Okay, guys, any questions so far? Computer-based testing. Okay, on top of, so as you guys, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. On top of all this, all of our strategies remain the same. I mean, the beauty of this, I was, as we've reviewed, and again, I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of international students myself over the years, and that's given me the advantage of seeing this test and how the computer-based and researching the test, and how that's laid out. Every one of our strategies stays the exact same, and as I said in the flyer for this live stream, if not improved. I think that if anything, this is actually an improved version of our strategies. We've crafted a lot of our strategies based on the computer-based test, not the other way around. And while they work well in the paper version too, I actually think they work in a lot of ways much better on the computer-based model, because you guys are able to see, you're able to move through the test so much more efficiently and so much less chaotically. But including like the fact that there's an untimed test. So if I exit out of this again, you guys can see here on these. This is just on that link I posted. You can see that there's untimed computer-based tests, just like we do on the regular written form. I highly encourage you guys to take the untimed test first and work through that, and then move into the timed test. I mean, the same exact things that we're talking about in our regular classes with the written form, all of that stuff remains the same for the computer-based model. I really wouldn't change anything. There's nothing that I can see definitively other than not being able to, we talk a lot about while we're reading, try to mark up the page just to try to keep you engaged. Obviously, you can't do that as much with the computer-based model, but that's a very minor thing in terms of the overall strategies that we've been working with. And so again, for freshmen and sophomores that are in our programs or taking our classes or thinking about taking these classes that are logged on now, I think that there's going to be major advantages for you guys when this does effectively flip to the computer-based model, just because our programs have really been built that way, including our own technology, the StarU app. So yeah, you guys can, again, as you guys work through this, we're adding different things about the app each time, each day, like the timing feature, whether or not you want to time yourself, you don't have to. But that's going to be something that we're transitioning as the ACT makes the transition as well. And I think we're ahead of most, certainly, in the ways that we're trying to connect with you guys in more of a modern way, including even maybe this video, this live stream. So it's my ultimate hope, if you guys really want to know, it's my ultimate hope to be able to stream to as many students as we can, not just for the ACT and the SAT, but potentially I see no reason for why we can't stream to you guys every day for all your math classes as well. So just like this virtual stuff is gone, we've wanted to show you some of these virtual capabilities, and I think that's coming up. And the circumstances surrounding it are certainly unfortunate. I certainly don't wish ill health on anybody, but given the fact that it's allowed us to see some of the deficiencies with the global education system, I think it's going to prompt us to kind of give us a kick in the butt. Everybody in the educational space, to give everybody a kick in the butt to say, like, geez, you know what, we got to be ready to go next time if something like this happens. So it's just my diatribe on the global education system right now. It's frustrating for me to see all of this technology available to not to students, but all of this technology available to schools, and for us to be kind of so far behind the curve in terms of in terms of being ready to implement that stuff in a short amount of time. We're all over the place. Everybody's all over the place from our experience working with students. All schools are just all over the place in terms of how they're approaching this virtual learning. Yeah, so Jackson had a great question there at the bottom. The anecdote off. Jackson, great question. You guys will be able to access this. So this link, the greatest part about these YouTube live videos, these links that I've sent out, those will be the same links to access the recorded version every time. So if you guys ever have any questions, or you guys want to rewatch a video of any of our videos, any of our live videos, if you guys go into the live feature of our YouTube channel, you guys can access any of our previously recorded live videos at any time. And then, of course, the ones that we actually record and edit, those ones are always available, just like anything else on YouTube. But these live versions, Jackson, will be available at any time. And the link that I've sent you guys in the Facebook groups, all that kind of stuff, and those flyers, all of that remains the same. Those will be the same links you need to access the recorded version. So all of these will always be available to you guys right away. Okay. Any other questions, guys? I set the timer, I think, on this for an hour, but this was it's just an introduction more to the computer-based model, and to show you guys some helpful links. In fact, on that note, let me post the link here for I'm gonna post as a comment just so that if you guys you lose track of the live chat, because that's the one feature, Jackson, that isn't always available after this. After a certain amount of time, I think the live chat goes away. So I'm gonna comment this. Whoops. This is the link to the computer-based testing module on the ACT website. Okay, so I just posted that in the comment section, guys. Okay. Any other questions overall? How's everybody feeling? If you guys are good to go, I don't want to keep you. I know that it's not that exciting to talk about ACT prep, although I don't know what really else is going on in most people's lives. I know that I'm just going to turn this off and then go watch Netflix or something. So we found ourselves in somewhat of an unfortunate time. Having said that, this is the ultimate time. Juniors especially, you guys are, a lot of juniors are always saying that this is the busiest time they've ever been in their lives. That's true. But now there's 2.5 months of basically no excuses. You have all the time in the world right now to prep it to the point of like boredom. Like if you sit there and you can't play another video game, that does not happen very often for 16 and 17-year-olds. But at some point, you've just played so many video games that you will get bored. And we still have a month of this, mind you, of just pure like staying inside. So over the course of that month, if you really stress, right, really strive, it's something we talk about a lot in our classes. If you strive to focus on one concept every day, just one concept. That's not that much. Like I'm going to memorize punctuation, or I'm going to memorize, whatever, 30, 60, 90 right triangles. One question a day will get you 30 additional questions right on the ACT test. 30 questions. If you can answer 30 more questions right than you did today, if you do one concept a day, 30 more questions will probably give you a 6-point increase from wherever you are right now on the ACT exam. And it's, again, what else do you have going on? I mean that in the best way possible. You truly have nothing, like 16-year-olds truly have nothing else going on. There's really no excuse because you truly can't do anything. You can't hang out with friends. You don't have after school activities. So yeah, I encourage you guys to take advantage of it. If nothing else, this is a good option. If all the bad, all bad stuff that might be coming from this, the one good thing is you have more time to focus on your education and your schoolwork. And this is encompassed in that. So, yeah, guys, I hope all of that was helpful. It looks like you guys are feeling pretty comfortable. I haven't seen any new questions come in, so I'll leave it there. If you guys have any questions in the future for this video, just make sure you comment and I'll respond, or somebody will respond on our team as quickly as we can. Otherwise, yeah, guys, keep it up. Keep working hard. If you have any questions for us on anything, please let me know. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. I hope you guys all stay healthy as well as your families. And yeah, we'll see you guys soon. All right, talk to you later, guys. See ya.